And I found a text that I would like to share with you here now. A text. I mean, many people have criticized exhibitions and museums, as you all know, throughout the entire 20th century. But what interests me in the text that I now want to share with you is it's a text by an anthropologist, and she just has a very different perspective on this topic and a very fundamental idea of critique on the idea of the exhibition and art as such. It's actually published in our little blue booklet here, and I'm going to read it for you and afterwards tell you something about why I chose it and what interests me in it. You can find it, if you want to read it with me, you can find it on page 23rd, sorry. It's called Art and Reality from the Standpoint of Cultural Anthropology, and it's a text by Margaret Mead, written in 1943. The study of primitive cultures, themselves highly integrated wholes, which satisfy aesthetic as well as analytical scientific impulses, throws most light upon the problems of the relation of art to present-day society. When we study primitive religions, rather than when we follow our present limited categories and try to talk of primitive music or primitive design. In the close interrelationship between a phrase of Balinese music, the design on a Balinese frieze, or the pattern on the border of a cloth, we find a clue to the relationship between art and reality for which our own culture is striving to find new formulations. Within the short space of this discussion, I wish to focus on this sentence I can leave out. Anyway, first, the art of a primitive culture, seen now as the whole ritual, just the symbolic expression of the meaning of life, appeals to all, that's important for her, appeals to all the senses. Just as also a medieval high mass involved all the senses, through the eye and ear to the smell of incense, the kinesthesia of genuflection and kneeling, or swaying to the passing procession, to the cool touch of holy water on the forehead. For art, and that's another core sentence, for art to be reality, the whole sensuous being must be caught up in the experience. Our present practices, by which people sit on stiff chairs, like you do, and listen in constrained silence to a piece of music, or wander in desultory, unpatterned groups in an art gallery, looking at framed pictures hung in desperate disregard of any relevance which might exist among them, is the very opposite process. One sense might be heightened, one emotion sharpened, but except in rare cases, there is no increase in the whole individual's relationship to the whole of life. Second, in primitive societies, the artist is not a separate person, having no immediate close relationship to the economic processes and everyday experiences of his society. The concept of the artist, whose gift sets him apart, or who only becomes an artist because his life history has set him apart, is almost wholly lacking. The artist instead is the person who does best something that many other people, do less well. His products, whether he be choreographer or dancer, flutist or potmaker or carver of the temple gate, are seen as differing in degree, but not in kind, from the achievements of the less gifted among his fellow citizens. The concept of the artist as different in kind is fatal to the development of any adequate artistic form which will satisfy all of the sensibilities which are developed in individuals reared under the impact of these forms. Both of these differences, the difference between a ritual which involves all of the senses and our present artistic practices which fractionate the sensuous man, and the difference between an artist who is merely the best of a host of fellow practitioners and the artist who is different in kind from men who are hardly his fellows at all, are not inherent in the nature of civilization as compared with the nature of primitive society. So now comes the most important sentence, which is the last one. Our own Middle Ages, as well as many great cultures of the past, developed complete, harmonious rituals which involved every type of sense experience. And the concept of the artist and the related concept of the fine arts are both special bad accidents of our own local European tradition. So, why did I choose this? Because I'm not trying to promote a return to medieval church masses here or to any kind of pre-modern culture, but I want to raise or discuss what this exhibition ritual that here in all my talks so far I always and again sort of described as a very important cultural achievement, a modern idea of a ritual, a liberal idea of a ritual, and a ritual that is flexibilized, that is individualized, and so on. That this, of course, comes with a price, and that this has left out many things that exhibitions can't really communicate or cultivate. That is exactly what Margaret Mead points to when she claims, or when she speaks about it, the idea of a ritual that addresses the whole being in all its senses, as a rational being, but also as a body, as a physical being, as a spiritual being, as a transcendent being. And this is an idea of a ritual that is sort of categorically opposed to what the exhibition does. The exhibition that cultivates specifically those values and categories that have been priorized by modern Western cultures. The eye, the sense of the eye, visuality, critical judgment, reflection, a sort of critical distance, and so on. So if we think, and this was a basic idea behind this project, if we think in the direction, if we want to approach the idea of a kind of a new Western cultural contemporary ritual, it would have to overcome this sort of these limits that the exhibition have brought into the idea of culture and ritual in a Western modern context, to bring sort of from the perspective of this modern Western context to somehow find a way to be back in touch with this wholeness that Margaret Mead speaks about. And I think the Fun Palace is interesting in that direction because it actually opens up a perspective to think that way. I mean, we don't know how it would have looked like if it had been realized, but it goes in several ways, it goes into this direction. Giving up the primacy of visual art, inventing or merging different forms of addressing, different modalities, different traditions, different art forms, the form of the event rather than the form of the exhibition. So, and of course having a different focus, focusing on what my previous speaker at the end said about complexity, the complexity of interhuman relations, the focus on the social processes instead of just on exhibited objects. So in a way, I think the interesting idea would be to use the Fun Palace of Cedric Price as an impulse, as a reference, to think how to reinvent the exhibition as we have it now in the Margaret Meadian sense. In the idea, I mean, as a reference, in the idea of a ritual that is in a way richer than that of the exhibition. Thank you very much. I see you back later.